Hello and welcome to the SurveYOUR podcast with James Baker and John Lever. Two chartered surveyors embarking upon a social media journey, locked in a virtual room with nothing better to do than to discuss everything surveying. And some things not. Hi there, welcome to the SurveYOUR podcast, and today we are talking referral. So APC Referral, Assessment of Professional Competence, getting referred at the assessment. What does it mean, and how should you approach that, and what should you be thinking about? So I think before we get going though, James, is it worth us probably just telling people how much or what assessing experience we have?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably. So do you want to start with that? Let everyone know what pathway and how long have you been assessing?
Yeah, okay. So I've been assessing for a decade now, and that all of my experience has been building surveying, but I've more recently started assessing the project management pathway just due to experience of, career experience and things and changing. But yeah, predominantly building surveying, but with some experience of project management.
Okay, cool. So I assess QS, so quantity surveying, and have done. That's the only thing I have assessed, only pathway, because that's the one I'm in. I was working it out the other day. I started in 1998. It's quite a long time ago, isn't it? Were you born in 19? You were, weren't you?
I was born in 19.
You were a teenager?
Of course I was.
Were you?
I was born in. I would have been 20.
Okay, that's all right then. I don't feel half as bad then. So 1998. So what's that? 23 years this year? 23?
Yeah.
23 years. So 23 years. Also, obviously, I'm one of the licensed assessor trainers. So I've trained 7,500 people to be assessors.
And also, me?
Yes, I did. Okay, didn't I just? Yeah, 10 years ago. And also, I was an RSS training advisor for about 18 years as well. So quite a lot of engagement with candidates and assessing. I think probably if I added up my assessments plus the mocks that we do, because we do mocks for about 15 years now as well, probably done in excess of about 2,000 assessments. So quite a lot of experience of thinking about these things. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So I think we're quite well qualified to talk about this topic.
Yeah, certainly.
And certainly, so I'm sure you'll have some funny anecdotes. I'm going to throw one in straight away. Not the main reason for referral, but this candidate submitted 650 hours of CPD in 2-year period. Now, normally you're required 48 hours per year. So 650 was awesome. And naturally, the inquisitive QS in me, you could see what I did, couldn't you? Out came the pen, sharpened my pencil, and out came a fresh piece of paper, and I took it all apart. And sadly, it was like out of all of it, they didn't have enough of the right CPD that they should have.
John, that is, with a very simple quick maths, that's 27 hours a month.
That's 27 that's one of your working weeks spent doing CPD.
I mean, how did they find time to work, but also find time to prepare anything?
I know. And just think, and let's just throw this one out there for everyone who's thinking about this. If you're an APC candidate, just put this in focus. 48 hours of CPD per year is what? 25 entries in your CPD log? 650, halve it, let's say 325 hours. How many entries is that in your CPD log? That's got to be at least 150 entries or 100 entries. So you're just giving the assessors all that ammunition to kind of go, I'd just like to talk to you about this one that you did 2.5 years ago. It was just like, what on earth is that all about? So
but it must have taken them 2 years just to fill in the CPD.
I tell you, when I read it, I did the whole double take and squishy eyes kind of going, really? 650 hours? But yes, it was interesting. But it didn't do that candidate any favors, because obviously, if you've just done, we often advise, don't we, between 48 and 60 hours a year. So you're seen as showing willing. But, if you did that, we kind of go, that looks fine. And then pick something out of there to talk about on the day. But 650, took it apart. I did. It really, it was like red rag to a bull, it was. So cool. So yes, so that's my first little anecdote for you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a bit around then why people get referred. What are the reasons? So what do you what in your experience do you find the main reasons why people get referred?
Well, I have had a ton of experience of this because as an RSS training advisor, every 6 months, the surgeries I used to run, you'd have a swathe of people coming in going, I got referred, RSS is rubbish, the assessors don't know what they're doing. And then the first question I would say is, so did you answer all the questions appropriately on the day? It's like, no. It's like, well, okay. So shall we have a chat around that first before we start slanging off the assessors? I think what the main thing people have said to me, and most people are quite honest actually, the main thing they've said is I just wasn't prepared. I didn't really understand what I was walking into, or I haven't really practiced enough. So that's what we kind of, from my RSS training advisor hat on, that's what I see people coming to me with. And even nowadays, I mean, I'm not doing the RSS training advisor stuff anymore, but we do the road shows and we do, you know, other things, and people drop us emails and talk to us and stuff. And it often comes back to that. I wasn't prepared enough. I didn't really understand what I was walking into. However, assessor side, and you've probably experienced this a little bit more as well, it's just poor documentation, poor presentation, not being able to answer the questions. I mean, the favorite old of let me ask you a question, and before I've finished asking the question, you've already started answering it because you think I've asked you this, but actually I haven't asked you about construction technology or valuation or something. I'm going to ask you about this niche bit of it, but you haven't given me a chance to finish the question. So, I mean, that can be quite annoying from an assessor's perspective.
Yeah, it's not a quick fire quiz.
No, absolutely not.
There's not a clock on there that you have to beat. Yes, it is an hour, but you don't have to beat the clock and answer as many questions as you can to win as much money as you possibly can, like you do in the chase.
Indeed.
No, it's not that same thing. But yeah, I would agree with what you've said, really. And often referrals are a combination of things. It's not just any one thing that people get referred on. But yeah, poor documents are never a great start, because you see them before you see the candidate, and you rightly or wrongly will form an opinion based upon those documents, because you can't help it, because that's just, you know, you're assessing the documents as well as assessing the individual interview. So you will make a certain judgment, and it doesn't always, you know, the candidate doesn't necessarily mean that they are good or bad. You know, they can be either or when they come into
absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, but then preparation is really key, and sometimes those with bad documents, poor documents, it's because they've got those, and then they also don't prep. There's just not, they just don't put the right prep in, and then therefore they come into the interview and they're not prepared.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know when we train assessors, you know, it's all about the holistic assessment. It's important what you said there, actually, just to reiterate that, you know, we don't make a judgment on the documents alone, because good documents don't mean a good candidate, and bad documents don't necessarily mean a horrendously bad candidate either. Have you had any experience of assessing candidates where they only got referred because of conduct and ethics?
No, I haven't actually.
I've had that a couple of times, and that's a really hard referral report to write, because it's kind of like, yeah, you were great, apart from conduct and ethics, and just you did realize that if you got one of those substantially wrong, you're going to get referred, and here we are. You know, and it's so demoralizing, actually, from an assessor's perspective. I mean, a lot of people think we're nasty people out there to get them, but we're not. And I don't know about you, but I feel quite demoralized if we end up with a day's worth of majority of candidates getting referred.
Yeah, well, I can give you a slight anecdote there, because the very first time, so 10 years ago, that I assessed, back in the day that we used to do face-to-face assessments, we'd do 4 in one day. And I remember it vividly. The first 3 candidates were all referred, and we came to the final assessment of the day, the 4th candidate, and I just said to the other assessor in the chair that day, and I just said, I really hope this candidate's good, because I don't want my first experience of being a real life assessor to refer 4 candidates.
Well, isn't that what building surveyors do, though? You're really harsh.
Building surveying is the hardest pathway, obviously.
We like to think so, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, thankfully that candidate did pass. But yeah, 3 referrals in my first 3 assessments was pretty brutal. You know, rightly so, they should have all been referred, but it was just quite demoralizing from an assessor's point of view to think, oh, this isn't good. You know, you want them to pass. So you don't want to be referring candidates. You want them to come in and you want them to do a good job and pass. So it can be demoralizing as an assessor when you're referring people.
Yeah. Have you ever had a day where you've referred all four? Have I asked you that already?
No, you haven't asked me, but no, I've never referred all of them.
Happened to me about, I think it's happened to me about 5 or 6 times in the 23 years. So thankfully not too much. However, quite frequently it's about a 50% or higher referral, which is a real shame. People just, I guess, just not being ready for it. I mean, other things I've seen as well is just a lack of understanding of what they're doing. I remember someone coming along to one of my surgeries in the past, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to go to the assessment. It doesn't matter if I don't pass. I just, it'd be a good experience, and I just want to see what it's all about." It's just like, seriously? You'll come out the other side of that with unless you don't prep for it and you're just going to wing it on the day and hope for the best, which will mean you'll get referred. You'll come out the other side of that physically and mentally drained, and then be told, that you've not got through. I mean, that's a mad way of approaching it. But it takes all types, I suppose.
It does. That does not seem like the best approach.
No. And what about project examples? That's the other thing, isn't it? Level 2s and level 3s, people not understanding the level structure and not getting their examples right.
Yeah, that comes back to documents again, doesn't it? Poor documents.
Yeah.
But frequently you see,
or experience, I guess.
Or experience, but often not understanding, and frequently you see candidates who don't really quite understand what level 2 is and what level 3 is, and we'll get them they're both confused, and they'll be offering advice at level 2, which is an example they could have put in level 3, and conversely they'll be having a level 3 where they've just explaining what they did, and they've got the information there, but it's the wrong way round, which never looks good. And often in cases it's just all about doing, and there's very little advice being given, so they're not demonstrating level 3 in the paperwork. I think it's also important to say though that practice, and when I say practice I mean mock interview practice, because it doesn't have to be just mock interview, obviously, but Q&A.
Practice, doing a mock is absolutely imperative, isn't it?
Yes, but it just helps prepare you for that situation, because it is really daunting. It's a terrifying experience. So from my memory, when I did it, I was so nervous.
I sat it 26 years ago this June coming, and I can still vividly remember the panel. I can still vividly remember the experience. I can still vividly remember going home and sleeping for a day afterwards. That's the impact. I mean, I had to. I'm not a clever lad. I had to work really hard for it, and I think it was like a 10-day prep lead into it, whereas other people might just take a week off or something. I need to do a little bit more than that. But yeah, afterwards I was absolutely wasted. And when people then, coming back to our point earlier, where people go, "Oh, I'm just going to go along and see what it's like." it's like, yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, no worries. So
yeah.
My favorite one, just to throw another one in there, was a chappie I was talking to a while ago now. It was a candidate. I think he must have come to a surgery or something, or it was someone that I can't remember his name, but it was cracking. He managed to talk his girlfriend into driving him there, waiting in the car park for him, and then there was a cool box of a 6-pack in the boot for him to drink on the way home. And I thought that was the good way. That was a very patient sort of girlfriend, but a very good way of dealing with the whole experience. So
great preparation.
Yeah, you'd think, I mean, if he'd mentioned that to the panel, we would have probably passed him on that basis alone, surely. No. So I'll go back through. So what we're saying is basically documents, preparation, practice, not understanding the process. Don't forget, candidate's guide is your client's brief. If you don't do your brief properly, you're saying to us as a panel, you can't understand or you won't read the brief correctly. And obviously project example or experience of examples, and that holistic assessment where we're looking at everything, presentation. And I mean, not lose sight of the fact that presentation is communication level 2, a mandatory competency. So,
Yeah, true.
Just on that note, actually, how have you found mandatory competencies? Because again, my worry constantly telling candidates, don't forget your mandatories. You don't record them in your diary, so therefore they're not on your radar. They're mandatory, so therefore they're not always seen as being that important. Yet there's 3 of them are level 2 and one's a level 3. Do you find that candidates in building surveying don't really pay much attention to them as well?
Yeah, you'll find some don't, and then they'll struggle a little bit with those when we get to questioning on them. But yeah, just purely because they've not really given it enough thought. I mean, they do tend to be sort of softer skills, really, don't they? The mandatories, but I'm trying to think of the ones that most struggle. But yeah, I do find with building surveyors, they will probably, building surveyors are kind of technical beasts in some respects as well. So the soft skills aren't always don't come naturally to them, I guess. But yeah, often people just don't really think about it because, as you say, you're not recording that information. So it's probably an afterthought, and people are very much, I think candidates are very much concentrating on the technical stuff because that obviously is important, but it's not to say that the other stuff isn't important, because it is.
No, that's very true. And when it's a level 2 and level 3 and you can't give examples, then that's, it's galling again from an assessor's perspective, having to write a referral report that's got mandatory competence in, because they're so easy to get right in a way. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's my thoughts around, why do people get referred?
Yeah, so then what does referral actually mean then? Probably be worthwhile us talking through that, so that any listeners can kind of understand what it really means to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, my immediate reaction to that is that obviously, again, the amount of people I have met over the last sort of 20 years of giving advice on how to deal with things, I think my opening gambit is always, you're not a complete failure. You are, it's very personal. You've got 3 people you don't know, because we're all unbiased, and that's the way we assess, who've told you're not good enough. And that's quite hard to take from an individual perspective. And I remember back when I sat it, you had to wait 3 weeks, so that's 21 days to find out the result.
It was 3 weeks when I did mine.
Yeah, and that's just long enough to forget about it, but not quite. And now it's down to 5 working days, isn't it? So I think the pressure, I don't know actually whether it's more pressure to wait only 5 days or you have to wait 21 days. But I think the the whole either euphoria or complete sort of dashing against the rocks sort of experience of finding out the answer, because it does mean such a lot. I mean, most people I talk to, we had a guy, you came along to it yesterday, didn't you? The roadshow, the APC roadshow.
Yeah.
We had a candidate feedback there, and he said, the biggest thing was that this is the hardest thing he's ever done in his career. To this date, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it can be, I think it can be quite a lot. So I think the message I would certainly want to give people is, you're not a complete failure. You just haven't quite got there. And a lot of that could be down to, I think, where I get annoyed, dare I say getting annoyed, where I get frustrated, it's a bit of a challenge. No, I get annoyed, is that people signing off candidates. So if you have a counsellor who doesn't really understand, and part of me says, if you're going to take on a counsellor role, you're messing with someone's career, so you have a duty of care really to that person to do it properly. So if you're just signing it off and you don't really understand what it is, that person's then going to go, in effect, lamb to the slaughter, and
too often
achieve, and that's,
I've seen that all too often. And I would go with you. I get annoyed at that because the counsellor supervisor are not doing that candidate any favours whatsoever by saying, yeah, you can go and sit your APC. They are the people who are signing off the competencies. If they've not checked that their candidate is competent in those areas, then why are they signing them off? But it isn't fair to the candidate, because the candidate will turn up and you see it in the paperwork, they don't have the experience. And yet they are sat in front of you.
Yeah. And these aren't just the close calls. These are horrendously poor candidates sat in front of you who you're sitting there going, hold on a minute, this is basic level quantity surveying, building surveying 101, and you've not done it.
They're the worst.
Yeah.
They're the worst. But and it must be crushing for those individuals, because
absolutely,
they've gone thinking that they've got a chance, but they've just not had the right level of support. I think that's what it really boils down to.
I agree. So it can be very emotional. I think the thing is, what does it actually mean? Well, it means that you've not quite met the mark, but it can be very emotional. It can be quite depressing. I mean, just the thought of having to re-energize yourself to come forward again the next sitting. Now, this is something actually of interest. I've spoken with a lot of people and advised a lot of people around the referral process. And on occasion, you do get a feel for individuals where, do you know what? It's not something that needs to be rushed. And I actually wonder whether taking a year out to come back is better, because everyone goes, oh, you could sit every 6 months. It's not actually every 6 months though, is it? I mean, you sit, let's take QSing and building surveying. You sit in, let's say November, you find out, let's say you sat at the end of November, you find out early December, you don't get the referral report probably until January because you've got Christmas in the way, and then you're resubmitting in March, at the beginning of March. So that gives you 2 months to reset and re-energize, and then admittedly that's submission, and then you got up till June to re-energize from the revision and preparation side. But I sometimes think coming back straight away 6 months later can for some people be too much. So
yeah,
you know, but I think the thing is always good to put that negative energy into a positive and go, okay, well, at least I know where I fell down. I can go and revisit those areas. I know the areas that I was kind of heading in the right direction, hopefully, because if it's not mentioned in the referral report, that's generally okay.
yeah. I think it's
you know,
important to point out that it's a personal thing at that stage. Some people will want to just get it done and go and do it again, and they'll be in the right mindset, and others may take it harder, and sometimes take a bit of time out. Maybe don't go for the next session straight off, have a break, because you might need it just to reset yourself, and then go, you know, for the next session afterwards, rather than the first immediate one that comes along. But it's a personal thing, and I think it just depends on your mental state at that point, really, and whether you
I
do need a
agree.
little
Yeah.
bit of time.
Yeah.
But I do think, yeah, I think that really comes down to individuals, and it's for them to decide. But yeah, you know, it will feel like the end of the world, but it isn't the end of the world.
No, and to tell the truth, once you've got your charter, it doesn't matter how many times you got to get there. It's like your driving test. Oh, did you pass first time? Well, why does that make any difference? You know, so that's certainly not something that I would necessarily be that bothered about. I mean, interesting. You said, you know, it's very personal. I mean, we'll get candidates, and you've probably experienced this as well. You'll get candidates who don't look that nervous. You'll get candidates who are shaking in their boots. I mean, I had a situation a few years ago now. It's only ever happened to me a couple of 3 times in all the time I've been doing it as a chair of a panel. So I'm there sat in the middle, kind of choreographing the process and making sure it all happens. But we had this one chap who he got into his presentation, and it was literally 3 or 4 minutes in, and he lost it. It doesn't always happen, but on this occasion it did, and it was kind of like, okay, I calmed him down, take a moment, you know, just catch your breath, and we'll start again. And he started again, and he lost it again, and he started to spiral out of control, really, a little bit panicked by the whole thing. And that was I really felt for him, you know, and that I think, again, people think the assessors are nasty, horrible people. We're actually not. We want you to get through. We want you to pass. So this chap, bless him, after I'd kind of, you know, he climbed back down from where he was stress-wise, it pretty much stuffed him up for the whole interview. And so, you know, we went through the motions as we felt we ought to. And had it happened again, I probably would have suggested to him that we cancel the interview and maybe do it another day. And so he got to the end of it, and he'd left the room, and we were all sat there as assessors. And the interesting thing was, I'd had that experience before. My 2 assessors had never seen that before, and they were both in mild shock as well. It was just like, oh, okay, I've not only got to sort out a candidate now, I've got 2 assessors I need to kind of give them a little bit of a back rub and get them back up in line, because we've got another candidate coming in half an hour's time. I think that where I'm going with this rambling story is the referral report. We felt we couldn't really write this guy a referral report, so what we wrote was, you know, something along the lines of, we were sorry that the stress got the better of you. We felt your documents were great. We're really looking forward to talking through the project examples, your case study with you, but appreciate that on this occasion, you know, it unfortunately, you didn't achieve the assessment because of the stress levels that you had experienced. And we left it there and wished him all the best, and, you know, go and get more practice and get through that experience, and see how you come back next time.
I have a kind of, it's not similar in nature, but just to kind of demonstrate that we are human, and assessors aren't that nasty, really. But I once had a candidate, and he came in, and he he was on the wrong pathway, basically.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he came down building surveying, and it became apparent we were going through technical questions, and I was taught, I was asking him questions about the best example I can give, really, contract administration, and he kept referring to the contracts department dealt with that, and he was basically a project manager. He'd had, going back to the supervisor and counsellor maybe not giving the correct advice or the right support. This guy, he was a lovely fella. He came across ever so well. He clearly knew his job inside out. And if he'd have gone down the project management route, he would have probably passed. But he just couldn't hit the levels that we needed under the building surveying competencies, and therefore we had to refer him. But in the referral report, it was written in a manner of that, you probably do need to look at the pathway, and the biggest reason for his failing was not because he wasn't good at his job or because he didn't know what he was talking about, because you genuinely felt that this guy was really good at his job. He was really he just came across so well, but he just didn't technically know the building surveying side of things. Building pathology, he had no knowledge whatsoever, and so the referral report was very much obviously highlighting his lack of knowledge and experience within certain competencies, but also just highlighting that maybe he needed to reassess which pathway he was looking to become a chartered surveyor in, and maybe reset. And I've no doubt that he maybe probably went away and he probably changed, and he will have been successful because he was a really good candidate from that respect. I mean, the other thing with that fella was his paperwork was awful, absolutely horrendous. And there was one page was stapled into his submission document.
And that would have been back in the day when they were
when you got hard copies,
You got hard copies, and they were submitted.
Honestly, it was the worst paperwork I've ever seen from this fella as well. But but like I say, it was clear that he was a very, very good at his job, but he was just not being. We were not assessing him down the pathway that he was actually doing and that he was delivering in his job, and so for that reason he had to be referred, which was such a shame.
Absolutely gutted.
It was you know what, we all kind of, the three of us sat there afterwards and we were like, well, we've got no choice here. But what a great guy he was. He was so engaging. He was so he spoke so well. He was so knowledgeable about what he did, but it wasn't building surveying, and it was just it was quite not upsetting, I won't go that far, but it was just a bit demoralizing, because you just think if he'd had the right advice, he'd have gone down the right route and he'd have probably passed.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've probably explained really what referral kind of means, and we've probably covered the next steps in many respects as to what happens. I wonder whether we maybe just kind of talk a little bit around what a referral report is, and then maybe a bit of advice around, right, you've got your referral report, what's the best thing to probably do at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, well, okay. In its most simplest terms, it's going to be broken down pretty much the same way as the document is. So you've got a summary of experience. So they're going to be broken down into mandatories and technical competencies. Interestingly, the mandatories also, conduct and ethics, is extracted out of those and added later because it's such an important topic. So we'll talk about the case study, about the technical competencies, about the mandatory competencies, about conduct and ethics, and about CPD. So basically each component that you submit, the panel will go through and go, right, this is what we suggest. Now, the other thing I think important about the referral report is it's written to the candidate, not the candidate, it's written to you. So this is when we asked you this. And I think the important things that certainly in the training that I give assessors on and chairs on how to write referral reports, it's all about when we asked you this, you said that, and this is the reason why we weren't satisfied with that answer. And it hopefully gives some guidance as well. There are differing qualities of referral report. It's not an easy thing to write. I mean, are you a chair?
No, I'm not. Largely, I could be, but I enjoy the assessing.
Yeah, I mean, from a chair's perspective, we're talking 3 or 4 hours to write a referral report on its first draft. And then I'm going to send it out to my assessors to read over. So another hour or so after that. So, it's not an easy task. It's quite a commitment. I do I do often think some of my fellow assessors, oh yes, I assessed sort of 15 days this year. Okay, yeah. As the chair, yeah, how many referral reports did you have? And it's like, well, 15 by 3, that's 45 candidates. Well, about 20. It's like, geez, really, how on earth are you going to find the time to write 20 referral reports? I find difficult to find, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
The time to write 3 or 4 after the event, and you need to do it really soon after as well, otherwise you lose momentum.
Otherwise you forget.
Oh, you do. There's only so much you can remember in the notes that you write and everything. But yeah, it's I mean, the referral report is there to offer guidance and support. That's really what it's for. And I would always say to any candidate, if you get one that's not very clear or doesn't really give you any guidance or support, and support, I mean, as in pointing in the right direction, so more guidance, I guess, is the thing, is to just then go back and ask RICS if it could have a bit more. I always say no harm in asking. They might say no, but there's no harm in asking. So hopefully the report's going to give you a bit of guidance. From a technical process side of things, though, what's the next steps? Do you want me just to run through those?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say I'll do a bit of an advert for Deliver for you if you want, and say maybe go and ask an expert.
Well, no, indeed, yeah. I mean, well, we have document reviews, don't we? And we have which we can help. Certainly, I think the frustrating thing from a Deliver's perspective, as us supporting candidates, is they come to us after they've submitted their documents, and it's just like, oh, why didn't you come to us before? An hour. That's all it would have taken for me to say, read this, make sure this is written in the right way. We do that at the road shows, don't we? We go through the competencies and sort of pick them apart. Someone will send one in and we go, yes, wouldn't have written it like that. Would have written it like this. Look, because you've missed the level point or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's something we can certainly support. And the road shows are a good thing to come to because they're so cost effective. I mean, what was it, £4 a month? It's nothing, is it? But the amount of chat that we can have around it and talk around stuff is
well, and cover topics such as this as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, yes. On was it next week? On the next road show, what are we on now? 41, number 42, isn't it? 42, we've got our assessor feedback, haven't we? So normally we have 3 or 4 assessors.
Yeah, I quite enjoy joining those ones.
Yeah, and we don't like to call it the assessor rant, but it is a little bit. But it's the assessor feedback. But I guess the most sort of the procedural side of things is not to forget that referral means you need to readdress and revisit everything. It means you don't submit your referral report anymore. So you're only
which I think is a benefit, I think, to candidates.
I do as well, because often in the past you don't often wonder whether has the panel been biased because they've read the areas in the referral report and therefore that they go heavier in on those areas and not on other areas.
I can answer that question quite straight. When I used to receive a referral report, and those were and they've been referred on competencies I was then questioning at their next interview, I would go in a bit heavier on those to make sure that they read the referral report and they'd learned what they didn't know previously or were able to answer better. So I think it did probably bias the interview to an extent. So I do think it's a good thing because it's a fresh assessment for candidates.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as assessors, we should be good enough that we can cover everything every time. Yeah. And as candidates, I think that's the other thing that I some candidates I've met in the past, I'm only going to kind of gin up on the areas I was referred on. I wouldn't, mate. I'd do the lot because, you're going to get asked across the board. So in effect, you kind of drop back into, if you were looking at a 24-month process, you drop back into a sort of a 6 months before assessment again. So you're dropping back to month 18 for a month 23 submission for a, month 24, 25 assessment. So you're just coming back around, but also, some people don't come back for a while, so you've got to think about CPD. And
also think about your case study. If you're not
and your case study. That's right. Yeah, because that's only
within the last 2 years, doesn't it? So if you are taking a step back and pushing your next attempts further back, then you may have to rewrite your case study.
Yeah, and that's that I think different pathways that has a different level of difficulty. I don't know about you under building surveying, but from a QSing perspective, you can get stuck on a project for a long time, whereas maybe land and property, you're doing multiple projects over a very short period of time if you're going and valuing property.
Yeah, I think building surveying, you probably might get a variety, but it just depends on what the business that you're working in, what sort of workload they're getting. And you'll have a set of projects that as a building surveyor that you're probably working on for a good few months and in some cases longer than that. And so, yeah, you might struggle to find another project if you have to change your case study in that instance. So sometimes it might be wise just to come back as soon as you can so that you can use it. Obviously, some referral reports will say that the case study was not appropriate and should be changed. And, you know, in that case, you can rewrite one. But yeah, I think, I guess I think important to say to people, you know, it's not the end of the world if you were referred at session 2 2020, you know, you can come back from this and you can have another go at it. But review your referral report, pick out where your weaknesses were, because that's a very good starting point for you. Have a look at your documents and see if you can improve them. Why not improve them? And if you do want some advice, obviously Deliver have got plenty of services available for that. But, you know, if your supervisor and counsellor aren't, you know, knowledgeable enough to be able to steer you in the right direction in that regard. So yeah, I think it's about getting the right advice and the right support, but yeah, use it as an opportunity to make it even better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I would probably stake my hat on about 60% of the people who get referred go on to actually need to improve their documentation. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's year on year, and has been for all the time I've been assessing, about 60% of the documentation is poor.
Yeah, I'd agree.
You know, and some pathways or assessors I talk to, they say it's more than that. And I think that's, you know, I can't sort of reiterate enough that the documentation is so important. It's not the be all and end all, you know, because we do want to meet the candidate. But if you think about it, that document you're handing into the panel is your competency. That's you on a piece of paper that says you're competent. Now, if that document has got errors and mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, poor layout, it's not been very well thought through, and it doesn't focus on the brief, then you're already kind of shouting at the assessors that you're really not up to this. And I think the other thing people don't really understand is the documentation, the way you present, all that practice you do. If you're what we call a borderline candidate, I don't know how many of these you've had, but I've had plenty of these. So this is, you walk out the interview room at the end of the day, the candidate's gone, and you're sat there going, do you know what? I'm not really sure about this one.
Plenty of those.
You know, and then it comes back to, well, how was the presentation? Well, it wasn't very good. How was the document? Well, the document's rubbish. It's full of spelling mistakes. Well, do you know what? That's probably going to drag them into referral. Or you have the conversation that goes, okay, not very good candidate, or, you know, we're not sure about the candidate for whatever reason. It might be just one area of competency, but you know what? Everything was pristine. Well, I might just give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's the other thing to say is referral often is, well, it is a cumulative array of different things and reasons. Generally, it's generally the only reason you get referred on one thing is because it's conduct and ethics, probably. Yeah, I think making sure that you're putting that prep time in and thinking it all through. I mean, the one thing I would say is our new website, very exciting. If you join as a member of the website for free, you can hit our free resources page, and there's a how do you write your competencies on there. There's a case study template on there, a layout of the case study on there. You know, I mean, there's free stuff that you can just grab anyway, which will at least give you a fighting chance to have a think about it. So yeah, interesting topic. But yeah, I look forward to talking with the assessors more about it actually at our next roadshow.
Yeah, that'll be good fun. They're always
because
good.
We've got, well, who else we've got there? We've got another QS, we've got another building surveyor, we've got a commercial property. Oh, that was it. The commercial property guy, he did quite a lot of assessments. He was going to do a rundown of his statistical assessment of what and why people
what happened last session,
which I think is really interesting, because I remember when he sent it to me, I started reading it. It's like flipping heck. You know, I thought I was a bit sort of, you know, analytical. You've really gone to town on this one. So hopefully, he's going to give us some feedback on that. So that'd be good.
Something to look forward to then. But yeah, I think it's just don't get too disheartened. And you know, there's plenty of people out there that get referred. Let's look at it this way. If you look at the pass rate, there's, you know, it's only just, you know, above 50% in a lot of the pathways, and in some pathways it's less than 50%. So yeah, it is. You know, don't get too disheartened.
Yeah, I mean that's first time pass rate. I think the general average, which includes people referred, is about 65%, but it's still not brilliant.
But that's still not brilliant.
Think about it. 35% equates to about 450 people every 6 months don't get through.
And let's face it, nothing worth having is easy. So,
No,
it's
indeed.
worth the hard work.
Yes, and I would say, just to throw this one out there and be a little bit slushy about the whole thing, is I'm as proud today as I was the day I passed for what I've achieved.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So I don't think it's kind of got any harder or any easier. It's still a sort of a peak to achieve, isn't it? Cool. Good. Excellent. Well, that was an interesting topic. So I look forward to our next one, and so look forward to catching up with everyone on our next podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
No worries. Kids, stay safe. Oh, actually, just throw. Oh, I'm gonna reopen it. We just shut it down, and I'm gonna reopen it. COVID watch. How do you think COVID's going to impact on people trying to get forward? Do you think if they've been furloughed, that's going to delay their assessment?
It might
do. You need to get further experience, don't you?
Yeah, so I'm sure there will be some. We'll see, but I know we've slightly moved away from referral, I guess. But I know there was a lot more candidates came forward in session 2 than in session 1 last year, which created a real challenge for finding enough assessors. For the RIS has struggled to find enough assessors to get all of those individuals assessed. Whether that's because it's online, I'm not sure, and so people are.
I think online would have been easier to tell the truth, but or maybe it's because
people to have a go, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, certainly might have an impact. We'll see if that reduces numbers or not. But given that property and construction are continuing to work, I would imagine that there probably aren't too many that.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big hike in number or a big number again coming forward this session.
I think we will.
Yeah. So, and also on that note, if you are furloughed or or being made redundant and you need to keep up on your CPD, again, the APC Roadshow, it's about an hour a week's worth of formal CPD. So, worth getting involved. Come and talk to us. We're doing our best to make sure that we can support you through this. So, on that note, shall we now bring this one to a close? Because I forgot to throw that in before. And and obviously, as always, stay safe. Wash your hands. Wash your face as well, I guess. And
don't lick any strangers.
No worries at all. Catch up with you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Hello there, and thank you for joining us for our latest episode of the SurveYOUR podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. Don't forget to subscribe at all your favourite podcast providers: Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so on. Also on Twitter and Instagram at survpod, that's SURVPOD. You can also get us on YouTube. Click the subscribe button, and don't forget to click the little bell. It tells you when we post our latest content, and on our webpage, survpod.com. Don't forget to leave us your reviews, comments, suggestions, and of course any questions. And finally, if you want to come along, join us at a future episode of the SurveYOUR podcast, send us an email to survpod@gmail.com. If you like what you see and hear, tell your friends. Let's put surveying on the map. Stay safe, wash your hands, and don't lick any strangers. Bye-bye for now. The SurveYOUR podcast is a copyright Deliver and Invise Limited production. We suggest you come up with your own ideas and not copy ours. Thank you. Catch you again soon. Bye-bye.